Welcome back to the Maxwell Leadership Podcast. Now, if this is your first time, still welcome back. We've been waiting on you. We've been right here, and I'm so glad you're here. See, this is the podcast that adds value to leaders who multiply value to others. My name is Mark Cole, and today we're talking all about leadership and communication. These are two things that cannot be separated in order for you to lead others effectively. Most people know John Maxwell as a communicator. He's spoken over 13,000 times. They know him as an author. But one of the things that my co-host and I, Chris Goede, love about John Maxwell is how he is a leader communicator. How he learns and takes not just communicating from stage and tells people what to do, but how he leads, communicates, showing people what to do. That's what John's teaching on today, and I can promise you after John C. Maxwell's message today, you'll learn how you can become a better leader communicator. Then Chris Goede and I, my co-host, will discuss this lesson and how you can apply it to your life, your leadership, your communication. Make sure to go to maxwellleadership.com/leader-communicator to download the resource button. You can also join us on YouTube if you would like to visually participate in this podcast. Here is John Maxwell.
Our commitment today in this lesson is to really help you understand communication a little bit better so that you can be a little bit better in communication. So let's go right to the notes. A communicator that cannot lead can cast the vision but not achieve it. I see it happen all the time. In other words, they're a good communicator, so they put the vision out in front of their people, but they do not have the ability to lead their people to that vision. So they can say it, but they can't lead their people to do it. So a communicator that cannot lead can cast the vision but not achieve it. A leader that cannot communicate limits his or her leadership potential. Because if you're a leader, you're a good leader, but you have the inability to communicate effectively with your people, you never are able to put the vision clear enough and be catalytic enough in casting that vision to stir the people to go forward. One more statement about this. A leader that can communicate maximizes his or her leadership potential. The way to maximize your leadership position and your potential is by effectively learning how to communicate what you know and what you feel and what you want the people to know and feel. The leader communicator must be able to do three things. Number one, develop the leadership message. There's the mechanics of developing a leadership message and placing that message so that it can be easily understood. Secondly, to deliver the leadership message. And number three, to sustain the leadership message. And again, the communicator that cannot lead effectively can only do number one and two. They can develop the leadership message and they can deliver the leadership message, but they cannot sustain the leadership message unless they have leadership in them. That's why I'm talking about leader communicators. I'm putting that together. I'm purposely saying I want you to grow in your ability to lead. I want you to grow in your ability to communicate. I want you to grow in your ability to be a leader communicator. Trustworthiness is the foundation for the leader communicator. Nothing happens that's going to be effective if the people don't trust you or me. Okay, how a leader communicator establishes this credibility. Look in your notes. Credibility is a leader's currency. With it, he or she is solvent. Without it, he or she is bankrupt. Communication reinforces a leader's credibility. So in doing so, let me see if I can help us with some ways to make sure that you have the communication credibility with people. Number one, speak the truth. Just simple. Tell people what the facts are. Be straight with people. When you don't hide anything and you just say, well, here, this is the way it is. And you may not even agree with it, but this is what I did and this is why I did it. And I didn't do that well and I'm sorry. And just speak truth. That will help you establish credibility. Number two, don't hide bad news. We live in an era of transparency and people want to see inside of the organization. With the multiplicity of information channels that are now available, bad news always becomes known, so it behooves management to be candid right from the start. Do not make promises that you cannot keep. And this is an area that I have had 2 or 3 people really help me with, because I have a tendency, I like to help people. I think I've got more time than I really have. And so I have a real easy tendency for me to say, yeah, I'll be glad to do that for you. And a little later, I'm saying, why in the world did I ever say that? So these are just areas of helping you with credibility. Speak the truth. Don't hide the bad news. Never overpromise. And number 4, do what you say you will do. Tell people what you're going to do, and then do it. Now, in the Leader Communicator's message, there are 4 I's that I want you to make sure that you have. When you communicate to people, just remember the 4 I's. The first one stands for inform. Inform people of what the issues are and what they need to do. Leaders owe their people an explanation of the situation, whether the news, again, is good or bad. It doesn't really matter. That isn't what's important. Spend a lot of time keeping your people updated what's happening. Here's what I discovered a long time ago. People are down on what they're not up on. So keep your people up on everything. Because the moment they don't know something, the tendency is for it to always go to what I would consider to be a negative bend. So keep them informed. Number 2, involve others by soliciting their input. This is so key for a leader, to spend time with the people. Decisions should be made at the person closest to the ramifications of the decision, not the one who is farthest away from those. So involve others by soliciting their input. Number 3, ignite. The third I stands for ignite people's imaginations about what they can do to make things better for themselves and their organization. Imagination is a powerful mental tool. That is so key. Often when I'm casting vision, I'll use the phrase, imagine this. And I'll take them off on a journey of, imagine what would happen if we could come together and be a people of peace. Imagine what could happen if we would sacrifice for this vision. Constantly helping to ignite the imagination of people. And the 4th I is invite people to participate in the enterprise. Whether it be the fulfillment of a goal or the transformation of a culture, leaders who talk about what people can do for themselves and by themselves are leaders who understand their role as inspiring action or change. All 4 elements need not be apparent in every message. So understand the timing of it, and it's not like you have to have all 4, but what I do want you to know is, for a movement to begin, all 4 of those I's at certain times of the message have to be included. Sometimes the leader's message is simply an update. Other times it's a call to action or an invitation to do something. But over the course of a leader's tenure, the success of leadership communication depends upon including these 4 elements over and over again. So there are 4 questions I must ask myself in closing this lesson as a leader communicator. Question number 1, do I have higher expectations of myself than of others? I hope you do. Because as a leader communicator, you must always go first and give more. Number 2, do I make greater demands on myself than of others? Number 3, am I committed to make my life count before I challenge others? And number 4, am I committed to take the first step before I ask others to follow? And I close with this. If so, I am on the journey of becoming a leader communicator.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
Hey, welcome back, podcast family. I hope you, like Chris and I, sitting here in studio, just kind of listened to this and caught what John was saying. He's been working on me for several years, John has, to make me a better communicator from stage in front of an audience. But Chris, I have to tell you, my favorite thing to do is to lead communicate.
Yeah.
Not stand on stage and tell people where to go, but to sit with a team and show them how to go.
Yeah.
And not only show them how to go, but also walk with them along the way, because often in leading communication, your walk is more important than your talk.
100%.
And I think John just really stirred in me today. He's worked on me so much about front of room communication that today I just went, yeah, this is something that not only do I enjoy, I feel like most of the time I feel very inadequate in areas that we talk about on the podcast. This is one that I just go, man, I got it. I like this one. I still have a lot to grow and improve on, but I would say that about you. I think that the enjoyment of leading is walking the walk with your team.
Yeah, I love that you made this distinction, because as soon as you hear communicator in the title, a lot of us think of, let's go tell people what we think on stage or present. And that is not what he's talking about right here. Matter of fact, that is great. And we've all been to, events, and we get all excited by somebody that's communicating. But I think the true essence of being motivated to do something different in life are those that have led you and been able to communicate extremely well throughout that process. And they are different. We've all had some leaders that couldn't communicate. We've also had, some people can communicate and can't lead. So what I love about this, podcast viewers, listeners all around the world, thank you for just being a part of our family and taking this and passing it on. What is awesome about this is that we get to see behind the scenes of John Maxwell mentoring Mark Cole on communication. And so we try to pull that out, that you can't put a price on this. And here's why I say that. Because Mark is exactly right about the difference here between stages and then in everyday life. Because I've had the privilege to sit in rooms, to sit in meetings, to sit in meals. And I just sit back and I shut up and I get my pad of paper out and I take notes, because I'm watching John and Mark have a conversation about how to lead and how to communicate while leading. And it's completely different. And so what you're going to hear today, like you hear on a lot of these podcasts from Mark, is just lessons coming directly from a mentor relationship with John Maxwell. And so thank you for being vulnerable, sharing that with us, allowing us to be on that journey and learn from you. And we're going to do the exact same thing today.
And Chris is not just saying that, because I just thought of this as he said all of that. Look at this right here. For those of you that are YouTube viewers to our podcast, I'm getting ready to show you something from Chris Goede just this week. If I can find it. Here we go.
Is this appropriate?
Watch this. You're not going to be able to see it. But look, we were just in a meeting this week on Tuesday night. This week on Tuesday night, we were in a meeting. Chris at Wednesday morning at 8:55. It's legit, guys. This is it right here. He sent me this text. For those of you that's viewing, it's that long. You know what all of it was? Was telling me what he had observed about my leadership the night before in front of our team. So we don't just sit here and talk about stuff and tell you what we think. Yeah. We actually are living it out. And that was really impacting to me, because it was not only affirming, thank you for that, it was very instructional on things that I intentionally did.
No doubt.
And it stuck.
No doubt.
And so it was a great reward for me for the intentionality. And I know we're getting ready to talk about how you develop.
Yeah.
But that was a big thing for me.
So listen, some of you that know me, you may be surprised I even sent a text or responded to a text.
You're incriminated now.
But Mark and I are in the same text and returning voice mail pattern, so we get each other when it comes to that.
You're lucky I've read it by now. You sent it on Wednesday a few days ago. I didn't expect
that. Let me set some context before we dive into a couple of things that Mark and I want to share with you guys. First of all, we understand, because we're in this space, that when we're speaking to people, now when we say this, we're communicating, we're talking about leading people. We understand that different people receive our communication different ways. Mm-hmm. And so as we're leading them, we've got to be aware of that. And as a leader, you got to communicate a little bit differently. We also understand that the people that are on our team, in our family, in our community, as we're leading or influencing others, that they make decisions on whether or not to be on the team.
Right.
Maybe we don't make decisions to be on the family, but we're there. to follow us where we're going by how we make them feel versus the facts that we're presenting to them. And so that's why I said, no doubt there's a difference between a leader who can communicate versus one that can't. Because a leader may come in and just be like, these are the facts of what we're doing, and they walk out. And that feeling that you left with as a team member didn't make you want to get on that vision. So I want you to understand there's a lot of layers to understanding your people. Mark and I are going to kind of go past that, but I want you to know, man, it first starts with understanding your people that are inside your family and your circle of influence before we dive into this. Because what Mark's going to share with you on this journey that he's been with on John is a little bit different than what we've shared in the past. And so you just need to understand there's a foundation behind it. Now, John gave us 3 things in the very beginning. He said, man, you must be able to do these 3 things. We've talked a lot about the second one, how you deliver your message. Yep. And you've shared with us the insights he shared with you. But we're going to talk a little bit about number 1 and number 3, which is what goes into developing that message. What have you learned about that? Like, what do you think about? How do you prepare? How do you develop that with those that are going to be in the room? And then talk a little bit about the third one. He talks about how do you make sure that what you developed and what you delivered is sustainable or is being sustained inside the organization?
So I love this. I love this topic, and I just want you to know, if you only hear one thing that I'm getting ready to say about leading, communicating, please take note of the next 2 to 3 minutes and then go do whatever you're going to do. The most important time of preparation for me in leading, communicating is the last 15 minutes before I take the microphone, before I take the chair in the conference room. But let me illustrate that on a personal level. 20 years ago, I was given an incredible gift of a relationship and with Stephanie and our instant daughter, Tori, at 11. And I realized that after a day of crazy busyness, and I'll never forget being told this by somebody, I can't even remember their name now, but I can remember their face. They said, Mark, what do you do the last 5 minutes before you get home after a hard day at work? And I said, well, I try to cram the phone call, I try to get everything done where I can walk in and put all this aside. He says, wrong thing. He says, you need to find a place 5 minutes from your house. You need to physically pull over. You need to drop everything, and you need to spend the next 5 minutes of your drive wondering, how can I best enter in my family's environment and make them feel like they're the most important thing? How would you want to present? Drop everything. And that last 5 minutes of drive, I still do it to this day. I pull over 5 minutes before, I get everything out, no radio, no phones, no anything. And then the last 5 minutes of my drive, I think about how I can walk into the house and lift the home environment. Now, I've been doing that now for 20 years, got a 17-year-old. She doesn't even know it. But every day I'm coming home, I'm dropping everything and spending that time. Now, let's take that back to leading, communicating. The most important thing that I can do as a communicator, whether it's in a boardroom with my team, whether it's on a stage with a bunch of people, whether it's on a Zoom call with a lot of our teammates, the most important thing I can do is to relate with them, to connect with them. That's why John wrote the book, Leadership. Everyone communicates, but few connect. If you're not prepared with your lesson and your thoughts 15 minutes before you go on stage, you've waited too long. And too many people cram. What's that opening? What's that deal? John has taught me, just like that person taught me years ago, how I connect with people at the very beginning and relate to them carries the power of the message. So when we're talking about how we develop, most of the time people are talking about how I am developing what I want to say. I'm developing how I want them to feel. How I want them to receive it.
That's really good.
How I perceive them. That's why John has taught me, and he does the same thing. Before I go on stage, I want to see the audience. I want to sit close to the audience. I want to be back there. I don't want to be back behind some curtain. I want to be able to visualize, how are they sensing? What's the vibe in the room? What's the energy? Same thing with my team. Before I walk into meeting, I would say, I wonder what their challenges are right now. I wonder how engaged they are. Is it the beginning of the day? Is it the end of the day? Has it been a tough season, or is everybody fired up because we've just accomplished great things? You've got to prepare yourself to really be a leader communicator. One of the things I purposed many, many years ago, Chris, 25 years ago, when I was not as authentic of a person as I would have liked to have been, is I determined that if anybody felt anything about me, I wanted them to feel authenticity. I wanted them to feel like I was being authentic. It was more important to me than them liking my points, my content, or the takeaways. I wanted them to go, wow, this guy really is who he says that he is. That doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
You have to really prepare yourself, because I come in and I'm so excited and my passion's overwhelming that you can miss the authenticity of the messenger because you're too intent on the authenticity or the applicability of the content. So when you're developing yourself, but by the way, let's take it to sustain. And you're right, we've talked a lot about deliver. The only way to sustain the message, if in 2 days you're still living the message. You talked about, we know a lot of communicators that know how to talk a big game on leadership. They just don't know how to live the game. That's all in sustaining. When I give a message in developing, I ask myself, will I still be feeling this message 2 weeks from now when I'm on vacation, 1 week from now when I'm traveling with John? Will I still be able to live out the message that I'm living? And when I have answered that question effectively, then I'm ready to know I'm giving a sustainable message today. Not will it stick in their heads with this great, cool, memorable handle, but will they be able to see it in my life if they were to sit in my car and drive with me 2 days from now, 2 weeks from now? That ability to live in whatever your message is, for me, it's authenticity. Develop that in your front end and make sure it's sustainable weeks later when you're not still giving the message verbally.
What I love about what you just said, and I want to unpack a couple of things for our listeners and those viewing on YouTube. When you talk about that, in order for it to be sustainable, by the way, towards the end of this lesson, John has 4 questions that you have to ask yourself as a leader and a communicator. Mark and I are going to challenge you at the end of this podcast, this lesson here, to go and spend some time reflecting on that and answering those questions, and maybe even share them with your team. Share this lesson with the team and give them some context, and then ask them to answer those questions about you. What came to mind when you just said that was, in order for this message to be sustainable inside my team, my organization, you have to live out what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. You have to live it out. And yours is authenticity in a way. And what's interesting enough is that if you're doing that, then the way that you develop your message is also going to be authentic, which you actually said was extremely important to you to be able to develop that in an authentic way. So I just want to bring those two things together for those that are listening, because it's very important that, I think, to Mark's point, if we're doing number 3, living it out so that it's sustainable, you're modeling it. By the way, leadership is contagious. If you're modeling it, then what's going to happen? You're going to be developing it the same way with that authenticity. Now, let me just go a little bit deeper on the developing part. So you gave us, which I love. I took a note on the, hey, I just gotta get away, feel how can I add value to the team, the family, whatever it is, clear my mind, get ready. Got to sit in the room, right? And I got to feel the energy. Let's go one step further. You know you have to speak to the team. You know you have to communicate a message to a group or a family. How do you go about what goes into your mind in developing that leadership message? You're sitting there, you're at your desk, you're thinking about, I've got to spend some time with the team and I got to share this message. What goes through your mind as you're beginning to develop what you're going to share with them?
So, first, let me quote a guy that's been on our podcast before. He's one of the best communicators, according to John Maxwell, and I agree with him. He happens to be a brilliant pastor, but he's a great podcaster here in Atlanta, Andy Stanley. Yeah. And before he communicates any message, he gets 3 or 4 avatars and makes sure that he gets in their shoes before he finalizes his message. He thinks about a single mom. He thinks about a retired couple. He thinks about people going through a very difficult time. He thinks about a hard worker. He gets 4 or 5 avatars and just pictures their receptivity to his message.
Good.
I can't really capitalize more on that. What I do, because I think that's brilliant, what I do in developing my message is, number 1, make sure, we're going to talk a little bit about this, do I believe this? Is it really right here? I mean, like, am I saying something because it sounds good, because I want to impress people, or do I really believe this?
That.
No, it goes back to authenticity that I talked about. The second thing I really want to know is, so what? When I'm done with my talk, what do I want people to do, or what do I want people to say about that talk? The third thing that I do, and I try to do religiously, is ask myself, would this message be important a month from now? Will this message have sustainability to it? We're still talking about sustaining a little bit. Is there a piece to this message that people, if they carry it forward, it will improve their life and help them reach their full potential? That goes back to me, Chris, to the question, or to my purpose statement. I want to motivate and inspire people to reach their full potential. I've got to challenge myself after every message, whether it's to my family, whether it's one-on-one,
Right.
whether it's in a boardroom, whether it's from stage. I got to make sure that I'm fulfilling my leadership purpose of helping people reach their full potential with the message that I'm delivering.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate giving that insight. I just took a couple of notes too, as I think about what am I doing to as a leader in certain situations to communicate. Like that's great to even think about how you mentally, because I know you spend a lot of time preparing, and that's part of that I just wanted to share.
Yeah.
And again, we're riding shotgun, right? This guy is learning every single day from John Maxwell.
That's right.
And so we wanted to bring to you a little bit different than just delivering, which Mark has shared in the past. Where we want to go now in the podcast is John goes into these 4 I's. And the first one is inform. And I love what he said, right? People are down on what they're not up on.
Yeah.
My wife often tells me, hey, listen, if you're not informing people what's going on, which I have a tendency not to do, return calls or texts like we talked about earlier, they fill that space with their own story. And most of the time, it's a negative story.
Yep.
So we got to make sure as we're leading people that, hey, you got to be out in front and you got to inform them. Then John goes in, he says, man, we got to involve them. And you do that extremely well. Where I want us to spend a little bit of time, and it's ironic that you just talked about your life mission statement, because where I went with Mark before we started is like, we got to talk about Ignite, because Mark does this, right? He wants to inspire, it's in him. And then we talked about inviting them. We are, as an organization, no matter what your role is, we are invited on a journey. Mm-hmm. And I think you only get people invited on the journey when you ignite them, when you inspire them. So it's kind of hand in hand, something that is just Mark's personal leadership mission. Give us just a lens behind, as a leader communicator, why are those two things so important? How do we go about it? And just give us some handles on how to do that.
In fairness to everybody listening that has their own unique way to communicate, it goes back to my values. So in my top 5 values, we challenge people to go through values. In my top 5, one of them is passion. And I say this as an explanation. Anything worth doing is worth doing with excitement.
Right.
And so inspiration is almost like a love language for me. It's definitely a leadership language. It's got to be delivered with inspiration. In fact, John often says, Mark, slow your enthusiasm down. It's too much for people. He's talking a lot of that from stage, but it applies in
Well, let me interrupt you for it. It does. And you and I have even talked about it, because I tell Mark all the time, there's nobody better in a leadership conversation one-on-one. And sometimes his passion gets going in a team meeting, and he said, what do you think? And I was like, it was good, dude. I was like, man, if you could just act like there was one person in the room, it'd even be better, because he wants to inspire people. He gets passionate. I love it. But.
Well, and so it goes back to authenticity. I authentically respond.
No doubt.
And give, therefore, because of that response, inspiration.
It's happening
passion.
right now, Mark.
It is.
Energy
It is.
in the
I'm
room is
trying to
beckoning.
slow down. So I feel invited when someone acts like what they're inviting me to is going to be incredible, and they act like they're excited about it.
Yeah.
So it does go hand in hand for me. And again, all of you are going to have to work this through your own thing. But because passion is such a high value to me, because I see the world through inspiration and passion, then that's how I deliver. And I'm constantly, every time I communicate, I'm going, how can I get people excited about doing something because of this message? Yeah. Excited, inspiration, ignite, do something, invite. Every session. Yeah. And John says this, and he says it better. What do I want them to think? What do I want them to feel? What do I want them to do?
Yeah.
What do I want them to think? What do I want them to feel? What do I want them to do? Well, ignite is the feel. Do is the invite. And so I believe, for me, and I'm being very personal here because I'm so passionate about this and I feel so equipped for this message. Again, most of the time I don't. I'm convicted. I got to do this, but I feel equipped. For me, it's not a good message if I have not ignited something and invited them to do something.
Mark started off our conversation by when we were talking up at the 3, when he said sustain, he said, man, I want this to be lived out. And he talked about, okay, so when I develop it, I think about, will this be lived out in a month or two? And he just gave you the reason why, which is a great kind of wrap to our time together today. Speaking of kind of wrap, John, it's ironic that John gave us his context and then gave us 4 questions that we almost talked through each one of them without even really knowing it, how Mark answers these questions himself. And again, we just want to challenge you to be able to go do that. Mark, I'm going to throw it to you to let us close. Let me just say this around the leader communicator. Mark has given us incredible handles and thoughts and ideas of how to live this out. You got to put your own style on it, but leaders go first.
Yeah.
Leaders go first. And in each one of these, I think you can hear that from Mark's heart, and it's contagious. Even a guy like me who doesn't have the passion and energy sometimes I get worked up. I don't even know where we're going, and I'm excited. And I don't even know. And then I'm like, how did I even get here? Because he wants to inspire and ignite it, but we all have that, and it's because he's leading with that. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for just giving us a little bit behind the curtain of what you have learned and how you're applying it. Just wrap us up today with any closing thoughts you might have around this because you're so passionate about it.
Well, I think the one thing I would say is go to maxwellleadership.com/leader-communicator, because in the show notes, John closes with 4 questions I do think every leader communicator needs to be asking. And we won't teach on that today. We've outstayed our time. But what I will tell you is, if I could get you as a communicator to lead what you're saying and live what you're saying and model what you're saying, your effectiveness as a leader, the doors of opportunity to your leadership will astound you. You'll accomplish more than you ever thought. You will get opportunities that you never dreamt of, because people want to follow somebody that is believable. People want to follow somebody that their actions match their words. And that's the challenge that we have for you today. We constantly, every single week, we challenge ourselves. What can we invite people to do? We live that out in our podcast. You want to know why? I mean, we inspire. We invite people to do something. And every week, we try to bring you an invitation to do something that will make you better. When Jake brought me this week's promotion, the thing that I'm going to tell you about in just a moment, oh man, we should be doing 16 laws of communication, because that's what John's done. But boy, they nailed what we want to offer you today, because it is a 21 laws of leadership digital product. Why do we on communication talk about the 21 laws? Because these are the laws, the things you need to be leading out and communicating out of your leadership. So you can go to the show notes. We've got a podcast special for you there. It's hundreds of dollars off today. I mean, they just went crazy on this. We normally give that out for $1,000, but today it's $199, and we want you to be a part of that. Why? Because we want to invite you into being a leader communicator. That's what Al said in the podcast that we did on significance and selfishness. Here's what Al said. You never see a monument for a selfish person. He said this being pointed out to go live a life of significance made a difference for me. Al, that's what we wanted you to do. We wanted to inspire you to do that. We want all of you to feel inspired. So today, go make a powerful, positive change in the world around you, because everyone deserves to be led well.
Are you ready to elevate your leadership to new heights? Join the movement towards High Road Leadership with John C. Maxwell's latest book. In High Road Leadership, John explores the power of valuing all people, doing the right things for the right reasons, and placing others above personal agendas. Learn how to inspire positive change and bring people together in a world that divides. Order now and receive exclusive bonuses, including a keynote on High Road Leadership by John Maxwell himself and a sneak peek into 3 impactful chapters. Take the first step towards becoming a High Road leader. Visit highroadleadershipbook.com to order your copy today.